Go change. You look cheap. My dad laughed after Mom ruined my dress. I returned wearing a general's uniform. The room went silent. He stuttered, "Wait, are those 2 stars?" The crystal chandeliers of the Grand Dominion Country Club were bright enough to induce a migraine. I stood near the back of the ballroom and adjusted the strap of my modest black dress. It was a department store rack piece that cost me $50. My mother had already told me twice that it made me look like the help. I just took a sip of my sparkling water and checked my watch. I wasn't here to impress anyone. I was here because it was the Diamond Jubilee for my father, Victor Ross. Victor was turning 60 and he had turned the event into a shrine to himself. A massive banner hung over the stage that read, "Lieutenant Colonel Ross, a legacy of command." He was working the room near the buffet, and his laughter bammed over the polite chatter of the guests. He was wearing his old Army mess dress uniform. It was tight around the waist and strained at the buttons. He had retired 20 years ago as a lieutenant colonel, an 05, but he wore that uniform to the grocery store if he could get away with it. To him, rank was the only thing that made a human being worth talking to. I watched him corner a local city councilman. My father was gesturing wildly and talking about holding the line in conflicts that ended before the councilman was born. He looked ridiculous, but nobody had the courage to tell him. My brother Kevin stood next to him holding a Scotch glass like a prop. Kevin was 35, sold overpriced insurance, and still brought his laundry to our parents' house on Sundays. Kevin spotted me in the corner and nudged my father. They both looked my way. The expressions on their faces shifted from prideful arrogance to mild disgust. It was the look you give a stray dog that managed to sneak into the house. They made their way over to me. My father walked with a stiff, exaggerated march that he thought looked soldierly, but actually looked like arthritis. "Elena," my father said, not bothering to say hello. He looked me up and down with a sneer. "I specifically told you this was a black tie event. You look like you're going to a funeral for a hamster." "It's a cocktail dress, Dad," I said quietly. "Happy birthday." "It's cheap," Kevin chimed in, swirling his scotch. "But I guess that's what happens when you work a government desk job." "What is it you do again?" "Filing tax returns for the motor pool." "Logistics," I said. The standard lie I had used for 15 years. "I handle supply chain paperwork." "Paperwork?" My father scoffed and shook his head. "I raised a warrior and I got a secretary. You know, General Sterling is coming tonight. A 4-star general, an actual war hero. Try not to embarrass me when he gets here. Don't speak unless spoken to." I felt a muscle twitch in my jaw, but I kept my face blank. "I know who General Sterling is, Dad." "I doubt it," my father snapped. "You wouldn't know real leadership if it bit you. Just stay in the back and keep that cheap dress out of the photos." My mother, Sylvia, drifted over then. She was a woman who viewed cruelty as a social skill. She was holding a large glass of red wine and wearing a silver gown that cost more than my first car. She didn't smile at me. She just frowned at a loose thread on my shoulder. "Fix your posture, Elena," she said. "You're slouching. It makes you look defeated." "I'm fine, Mom," I said. "You're not fine. You're invisible," she said. "Oh, look. Your brother needs a refill. Move out of the way. You're blocking the path to the bar." She made a shooing motion with her hand. As she did, she took a step forward and stumbled on the carpet. It was a performance worthy of daytime television. The glass of red wine in her hand didn't just spill, it launched. A crimson wave crashed directly onto the front of my dress. The cold liquid soaked through the cheap fabric instantly. It ran down my stomach and dripped onto my shoes. The chatter in the immediate area stopped. I stood there gasping from the cold shock of it. My mother didn't apologize. She put a hand to her mouth in a mock gasp that didn't reach her cold eyes. "Oh, for heaven's sake," she sighed, sounding annoyed rather than sorry. "Look what you made me do. You were standing right in my blind spot." "You threw it," I whispered, wiping at the stain that looked like a gunshot wound on my chest. "Don't be dramatic," Kevin laughed. "It's an improvement. Add some color to that boring outfit." I looked at my father, waiting for him to defend me, waiting for him to be the officer he claimed to be. He just looked at the stain and curled his lip. "Great," Victor said. "Now you look like a disaster. I can't have you walking around my party looking like a casualty. Go out to the car." "The car?" I asked. "Yes, the car," he barked. "Go sit in the parking lot until the toasts are over, or just go home. I can't introduce you to General Sterling looking like a soup kitchen charity case. You're ruining the aesthetic." My mother dabbed at a tiny drop of wine on her own wrist. "Go on, Elena. You're making a scene. It smells like cheap Merlot." Anyway, I looked at the three of them. My family. The people who were supposed to be my squad. I realized in that moment that I wasn't a person to them. I was a prop that had failed to function. I was a background extra who had ruined the shot. "Okay," I said. My voice was steady. "I'll go change." "You don't have anything to change into," Kevin sneered. "Unless you have a janitor's uniform in that beat-up sedan of yours." "I'll figure it out," I said. I turned and walked away. I could feel their eyes on my back. I could hear Kevin making a joke about how I probably bought the dress at a yard sale. I kept walking. I walked out of the ballroom, past the check-in desk, and out into the cool night air. The valet offered to get my car, but I shook my head. I walked to the far end of the lot where I had parked my sedan. I unlocked the car and popped the trunk. The trunk light flickered on, illuminating the chaotic mess of a life lived between bases. Gym bags, Mr. Boxes, and a heavy black garment bag with the seal of the Department of the Army stamped on it. I stared at the bag. For 15 years, I had played the game. I had let them believe I was a clerk. I let them believe I was a failure because it was easier than explaining the truth. The truth was that I didn't file paperwork. I authorized kinetic strikes. The truth was that while my father was reliving the Cold War, I was commanding joint task forces in the Middle East. I reached out and unzipped the bag. The moonlight caught the heavy gold braiding on the sleeves. This wasn't just a uniform. It was the Army blue mess uniform, the most formal evening attire in the military. It was tailored to perfection. I touched the shoulder boards. They weren't empty. They didn't have the oak leaf of a major or the bird of a colonel. They held 2 silver stars. Major General 08. My father was a lieutenant colonel, an 05. In the military food chain, he was a middle manager. I was the CEO. I looked back at the glowing windows of the country club. I could see the silhouettes of the guests inside. I could see my father holding court, probably telling a story about a training exercise from 1985. He wanted a soldier. He wanted someone who understood the chain of command. I felt a cold calm wash over me. It was the same calm I felt before a breach. I stripped off the wine-soaked dress right there in the parking lot. I didn't care if anyone saw. I pulled on the high-waisted trousers with the gold stripe running down the leg. I buttoned the crisp white shirt and fixed the bow tie. I slid the mess jacket on. It was heavy, weighted with history and authority. I fastened the chain across the front. I checked my reflection in the car window. The woman staring back wasn't Elena, the clerk. It was General Ross, the hammer. I reached into the glove box and pulled out my miniature medals. I pinned them to the left lapel. The rack was dense. Distinguished Service Medal, Legion of Merit, Bronze Star with Valor. It was a wall of color that screamed competence. I slammed the trunk shut. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the quiet parking lot. I started walking back toward the club. My low quarter shoes clicked rhythmically on the asphalt. It was a cadence I knew by heart. The valet saw me first. He was leaning against a pillar, checking his phone. He looked up, saw the uniform, saw the stars, and instinctively straightened up. He didn't know who I was, but he knew what power looked like. I walked up the steps to the main entrance. The girl at the check-in desk looked up and her jaw dropped slightly. I didn't stop. I pushed the heavy double doors open and stepped into the ballroom. The room was loud. The jazz band was playing something upbeat. Waiters were weaving through the crowd with trays of champagne. I stood at the top of the short staircase that led down to the dance floor. I didn't say a word. I just stood there. The uniform did the work for me. Mess blues are distinct. They are bold. And when a woman wears them, people notice. The conversation near the stairs died down first. People turned to look. Then the silence spread like a contagion. It rippled outward from where I stood until the entire ballroom fell quiet. Even the band trailed off, the drummer catching the vibe and stopping his brushwork. My father was at the far end of the room, his back to me. He was laughing at his own joke. He realized suddenly that he was the only one laughing. He turned around, annoyed that he had lost his audience. He squinted across the room. The lights were dim, but the spotlights from the stage cut through the gloom. He saw a figure in a high-ranking uniform. His first instinct was excitement. He thought it was General Sterling. He adjusted his own jacket and put on his best sycophantic smile. Then I started to walk. Click, click, click. I descended the stairs. The crowd parted for me. They didn't know who I was, but they moved out of the way with the instinct of a herd, making way for a predator. As I got closer, the smile on my father's face faltered. He squinted harder. He recognized the walk first. Then he recognized the face. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. It was like watching a fish gasp for air on a dock. Kevin was standing next to him. Kevin was drunker now. He squinted at me and let out a loud braying laugh. "Whoa!" Kevin shouted, his voice cutting through the silence. "Look at this. Elina's playing dress-up. Did you rent that from a costume shop? You look like a band conductor." My father didn't laugh. His eyes were locked on my shoulders. He was an officer. He knew what the stars meant. He knew the spacing. He knew the size. He was trying to process the impossibility of it. "Kevin, shut up," my father whispered. His voice was trembling. "What?" Kevin said, oblivious. "Look at her. It's stolen valor. Right, Dad? Tell her to take it off before she gets arrested." I stopped 10 feet away from them. I stood at the position of attention. Not the rigid, scared attention of a recruit, but the relaxed, dangerous attention of a commander. I looked my father in the eye. "You told me to change, Colonel," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it carried to every corner of the silent room. "You said my dress was inappropriate for a military function." I corrected the deficiency. My mother pushed through the crowd. She looked furious. "Elena, have you lost your mind? Take that off this instant. You are making a mockery of your father's service." "Actually, ma'am," a deep voice boomed from the entrance behind me, "she is the only one here honoring it." The crowd turned. Standing at the doorway was General Marcus Sterling, the 4-star, the guest of honor. He was flanked by 2 military police officers and his aide. General Sterling was a giant of a man, a legend in the armored divisions. My father's face went from pale to gray. He looked at General Sterling, then back at me. He was vibrating with confusion. General Sterling walked into the room. He didn't look at my father. He didn't look at the birthday banner. He walked straight toward me. The crowd practically jumped out of his way. He stopped 3 paces in front of me. And then the impossible happened. General Sterling, the 4-star commander of U.S. forces, snapped his heels together. The sound was like a whip crack. He raised his right hand in a slow, crisp salute. He held it there. "General Ross," Sterling said, his voice full of warmth and respect, "I didn't know you were in the area. The Pentagon said you were still overseeing the drawdown in Sector 4. I returned the salute. A perfect, practiced motion. "Good to see you, General Sterling. I'm on leave." A brief one. We dropped our salutes simultaneously. The room was so quiet you could hear the ice melting in the buckets. "General," Kevin said. The word coming out as a squeak. "Dad, why did he call her General?" General Sterling turned slowly to look at Kevin. He looked at him like he was a stain on the carpet. Then he looked at my father. "Victor," General Sterling said coolly, "I see you've met Major General Elena Ross, but I'm confused. Why is a 2-star general standing here while a retired lieutenant colonel is lounging with his hands in his pockets?" My father looked like he was having a stroke. His brain was misfiring. The daughter he had bullied for 40 years. The clerk. The failure. The hierarchy he worshipped had just turned upside down and crushed him. She's my daughter," my father stammered. "She works in logistics. She's a GS-5. She commands the logistics of the entire 3rd Army Corps." Victor Sterling corrected him. "She has more combat time than you have time on the golf course, and right now she is the ranking officer in this room, and you are out of uniform." My father looked down at his ill-fitting jacket. He looked at my stars. 2 stars beat a silver oak leaf. It wasn't even a fight. It was a massacre. "Protocol, Colonel," I said softly. My father flinched. He knew what I meant. In the military, when a junior officer encounters a senior officer, they render honors. It doesn't matter if they are father and daughter. It doesn't matter if it's a birthday party. The rank is the rank. My father's hands were shaking. He tried to laugh it off. He looked around the room for support, but the guests were staring at him. They were waiting. The silence was heavy, suffocating. He realized he had no choice. If he didn't do it, he was admitting that his entire identity, the soldier persona he had built his life around, was a lie. Slowly, painfully, he brought his heels together. It was agony for him. He raised his hand. His fingers were trembling as they touched the brim of his eyebrow. He saluted me. His eyes were wet, filled with humiliation and fury. "General," he choked out. I let him hold it. I let him stand there, hand quivering while the guests watched. I thought about the wine on my dress. I thought about the years he called me a secretary. I thought about the clerk insults. I let the seconds tick by. 1, 2, 3. Finally, I raised my hand and returned a casual, dismissive salute. "Carry on, Colonel," I said. My father dropped his hand and slumped. He looked smaller. The air had gone out of him. "I think there's been a mistake," my mother hissed, stepping forward. She was too arrogant to understand the danger she was in. "Elena, stop this charade. Tell General Sterling the truth. Tell him you filed papers." I turned to my mother. "I'm done explaining myself to civilians, Mother, and you are creating a security risk." I looked at General Sterling. "Sir, I apologize for the atmosphere. I was under the impression this was a disciplined gathering. It appears to be a disorganized mess." "Agreed," Sterling said, eyeing the wine stain on the floor. "I came to pay respects to a veteran, but I don't stay where flag officers are disrespected. Are you leaving, Elena?" "I am, sir," I said. "I have a briefing in the morning." "I'll walk you out," Sterling said. I turned my back on my family. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't hug them. I simply executed an about-face and began to walk away. General Sterling walked beside me, matching my stride. "Wait," my father called out. Desperation cracked his voice. "General Sterling, the toast. I have a speech prepared." Sterling didn't even look back. "Save it for your bingo night, Victor. You just insulted the finest tactician in the army. You're lucky she's family, or I'd have stripped you of your retired benefits for conduct unbecoming." We walked out the double doors. The heavy wood closed behind us, sealing the ballroom off. The music didn't start back up. Outside, the air was crisp. My heart was hammering against my ribs, but my hands were steady. General Sterling looked at me and offered a rare, genuine smile. "That was brutal, Ross," he said. "It was necessary, sir," I replied. "The wine?" he asked, glancing at the pile of ruined fabric in the trunk of my car. "Hostile action," I said. "Neutralized." "Good," he nodded. "You need a ride? My detail can take you to the base." "I'll drive," I said. I like the quiet. I drove home that night in my dress blues. I didn't cry. I didn't feel sad. I felt light. The weight of their approval, which I had been carrying for decades, was gone. I had dropped it on the ballroom floor. 6 months later, I was back at the Pentagon. I was sitting in my office reviewing a deployment schedule for the Eastern European Theater. My aide, a sharp young captain, knocked on the door. "Ma'am," she said, "you have a letter. It's flagged as personal, but it was sent to the official command address." She handed me a thick envelope. I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was my father's scroll. I opened it. There was no apology inside. "No, I'm sorry I treated you like garbage." Instead, there was a trifold brochure for the Patriots Rest, an exclusive high-end military retirement community in Florida. Attached to the brochure was a handwritten note. "Elena, they have a wait list of 5 years, but they expedite processing for the immediate family members of general officers. I need a letter of recommendation from you. It needs to be on official letterhead. Your mother hates the stairs in our current house. Do this for us. Family helps family." Dad. I read it twice. The audacity was almost impressive. He still didn't get it. He thought rank was a magic wand you waved to get better parking spots and country club access. He didn't understand that rank was a burden. It was earned in blood and sacrifice. He wanted the general's signature, but he had treated the daughter like a nuisance. I picked up my pen. I didn't write a letter of recommendation. I took a standard routing slip and clipped it to the brochure. On the slip, I wrote one sentence in red ink. "Applicant does not meet the standards for priority status. Process through normal civilian channels." I handed the packet back to my aide. "Ma'am," she asked, "what do you want me to do with this?" "Send it to the Standard Processing Center in St. Louis." I said the one for regular veterans. "No priority tags. That will take 6 months just to get opened, ma'am." She noted. "I know," I said. "He has plenty of time." Dismissed. The captain saluted and walked out. I turned my chair to look out the window at the Toac River. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the capital. I was Major General Elena Ross. I had a corps to run. I didn't have time for people who only loved the uniform and not the soldier inside it. My father wanted a salute. He got one. That was the last thing he was ever going to get from me.